You can talk.
I can move my stuff.
Yes.
No problem.
Yes. John, we'll have introductions in a minute, but thanks for coming. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Good to see you.
Okay. All right.
Thanks for being here.
Yes. Let's do introductions starting here.
Gary Stanford, Lewis County Commissioner, District 3.
Edna Fine, Commissioner, District 1.
Bobby Jackson, Commissioner, District 2.
Tina Lester, Clerk of the Board.
Becky Butler with the Budget Office.
John Bradshaw, Mayor of One Lock.
Eric Martin, County Manager. Scott Tenney, County Clerk.
Mike Wild, Excel Road.
Lindsay Pollock, Warlock.
Alex Brown, Frontal.
Susan Delaire, Fall Publishing. And?
John Braun. Oh,
And?
go ahead. John Braun, State Senator, 20th District.
I'm Brian Green with Liberty's Champion Channel from Onalaska.
Okay. Senator Braun, John, I'm glad that you're here today. And made an extra effort to come.
Yeah, apologies for being late. I had a last minute delay.
Yeah.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
That's okay. We had some other discussion items before you came. So, as you know, counties, cities, we all have issues regarding our unfunded mandates. And, I mean, some of this you've heard many times. Indigent defense, jail medical, some of our needs for our county, broadband. You know, I know you're working really hard on dollars for solving our flooding issues. And we asked Scott Tenney, our clerk, to come over and talk about some of the things that we're facing in law and justice side that really is taking away our revenue and our ability to work with some of our citizens who are involved in law and justice.
Okay.
You want me to go now?
Yep.
Good thing is I see that you voted no on the bill, House Bill 1783. Well, it was Senate bill I got to you guys, but the bill that changed the way that legal financial obligations could be imposed on individuals. And I think that I'm not sure that everybody that voted for that bill understood what it truly meant to the system that was in place and that already had some checks put in place about who was being ordered to pay legal financial obligations and what consequence there was to an individual that failed to pay the legal financial obligations. That bill now makes it where if at any time during the proceedings, time the case started till the time of sentencing, if that person was indigent, the court cannot impose anything other than restitution, which is money owed to a victim, the crime victim's fee, and if they've never had their DNA taken for a felony conviction, a $100 DNA fee. It used to be standard that every criminal case, the defendant was ordered to pay a $200 filing fee, which helped offset the cost to the county to, run the courts. There were attorney's costs, possibly jail costs. There were DUI fines that were imposed, drug fines that were imposed that were specific to different crimes that helped pay for the services that those types of crimes cost the county and the state. And the way it is now, if somebody is in jail, they went on some bender using drugs for a couple months, they historically work as an electrician or a union job, or they fish up in Alaska making good money. If at any time during that time they're in jail for a month or two and they get any sort of a public assistance, or they're not making 125% of the federal poverty guideline, that makes them indigent. That means the court, even if the guy's leaving, getting sentenced that day, getting released the next day on credit for time served, getting on a plane to go to Alaska to get on his crab boat and make 100 grand in 4 months, the court can't consider his future ability to pay as they could before this bill was passed. And it's going to cripple the counties across this state as far as the revenue that's coming in that help offset the cost of prosecuting these individuals and housing them in jail. And the money is still coming in from what had previously been ordered. But you're going to see over the next 3 to 5 years, a significant decrease to the revenues coming in that directly support, you know, the court system that these individuals are having to go through. And I haven't seen anything where the state has come up with any plan to kind of replace that money that they have taken away the ability of the court to even consider somebody's future ability to pay, which used to be the standard, their present or future likely ability to pay. And then even if they are, say they have a job, they're doing work release, or they're not considered indigent time of sentencing, if at any time after that they become indigent and they come back to court for failing to pay, and that's even if they're failing to pay their restitution, they owe somebody, they stole their car and owe them $10,000, and they come back, the court summons them back in, which doesn't happen very often anymore, but there are the occasion when a victim's calling and saying, hey, this guy's got money, or, you know, he's should be paying, he's not. Well, if that person comes back for a non-compliance hearing, and at that time they're determined to be indigent, they can't be made to pay or can't be held responsible without paying. There's no consequence to that individual at that point. It's all this determination of indigency, which is a pretty broad definition now by the statute. And I'm not sure if, when this bill was passed, that everybody looked into what that determination of indigency was, kind of like a get away with it card. I mean, it's, if you're determined indigent, anytime during that proceedings, you don't have to pay for any of the costs that traditionally were expected to be paid by the individuals, you know, causing those resources to be used. We have to figure out a different way to fund that, because it's going to cripple the justice system.
Yep. You're absolutely right.
Yep.
So I voted no for a reason. I fought against this bill for almost 6 years. The folks that passed it know exactly what it's doing, if you're wondering. I suspect there's some people that voted for it that didn't fully understand it, but a lot of folks that were advocating for the bill and advocating, and ultimately the legislators that voted for it, they know exactly what they're doing. And it's absolutely going to underfund your court system, and the court systems all around the state. And after holding it off for nearly 6 years, we couldn't hold it off any longer. And it's going to be a disaster. Everything you said, I agree with.
Okay. and I assume that you were on the same
tried
page,
very
right?
hard to stop this. It is and I think that you should take it to, I think when we talk about unfunded mandates, and we have some disagreements on what's an unfunded mandate and what's not an unfunded mandate, and I can't tell you off the top of my head. It's actually kind of interesting to think about that way, whether this meets the legal definition of an unfunded mandate or not, but it absolutely is. And if the counties want to sue on something, this is an excellent opportunity to sue on something, because they have left the justice system unfunded in the future, or underfunded, I should say, not
Yes.
unfunded. It's going to be a disaster, and the reality is that there were folks that were legitimately unable to pay in the past, and the courts were given significant leeway in trying to help those folks out. There were folks that truly needed help to get back on their feet and do the right, and recover from whatever crime they may have committed, or period in jail or in prison. There are already rules in place to deal with those folks, help them get through. And what we did is said, nope, we don't want anybody to pay, because we don't want anybody to go to jail.
Yep.
Simple as that.
I appreciate your understanding of the situation.
Yes. So I'll take that back to Wasack and say.
This is a
The
much
big deal.
bigger. This has been, like I said, many years. We've gone round and round with the fiscal note, and they kept saying, "Oh, it's only going to cost a little bit," and it's like $500,000 or $1 million, and it's actually it's likely tens of millions of dollars to the counties around the state, they're not interested.
Yeah.
This has actually been going on a lot longer than that. I testified to the legislature over 20 years ago about this type of issue. I mean, this movement's been underfoot for a long time. And
I would fully support it. Either not. I don't know if you have I don't know if under the unfunded mandate law you have the ability to just say no and do it anyway or not. I think it'd have to do with the legal definition. That's an interesting question I don't know the answer to. but you certainly have the ability to push back, and both either to say, you know, replace this funding with something else, or you know, don't make us do this, one of the two.
Yeah.
But it's actually somewhat of an injustice if we're just going to replace the funding with something else, because you have folks, to your point, that have, you know, done something wrong,
Yeah.
committed a crime, they owe LFO or they have some obligation, and instead of making them pay, we're going to make everybody pay. It's not right. Okay. Didn't solve that problem. I disagree
But
with
we
you.
know which side you're on. We know.
There's absolutely a reason I voted no for that. It's a
Yeah.
terrible bill.
Thank you for that vote.
It didn't help.
Yeah. Culverts, that's a big
Okay.
one. Eric, you want to talk about
Sure, I'll talk
culverts?
about culverts. So, just to give you a snapshot of where we're at in Lewis County, a study was done, inventory, it was quite a few years ago now, so I don't think it's probably gotten better, but we have over 600 fish barriers on fish streams that are just on county roads. That's just public. So private lands, you know.
Yeah, you're not responsible for private.
We're not, but you know, there could be more there. So if you're looking at, you know, our average cost is somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000 to replace these. You're looking at $185 million to do this work in Lewis County. So as I told the legislators at the roundtable, I'm not here to ask for $185 million, but what the point is, and I think what WASAC will be lobbying for, because it's on their agenda now, is to say that when the state goes to look at how to deal with meeting the demands of the lawsuit that the tribes brought about fish passage, we ask that you also consider that problem for the locals as well, because we consider ourselves to be the next target if they wanted to come after someone else for fish passage. It's certainly the same issue, certainly the same type of problem, but the funding is probably even greater for us than it might be for the state. So
You think overall that the bill for all the counties is bigger than the state's bill?
I think so. Just because we have so many more crossings, so many more miles of road. I mean, potentially.
Maybe, I don't know. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
I mean, if the order of magnitude is anywhere close to what's in Lewis County times 39, I mean, you're getting right up there. So.
Yeah. I agree with you. The culverts are going to be a hard problem just for the state to handle on its own, and it's frankly much bigger than the state. It's likely to push into other states at this point. The U.S. Supreme Court declining to hear it. And I'm not necessarily opposed to replacing the culverts. I'd like to see us do it on a priority basis,
Yes.
where you have the best bang for the buck. I'm not sure why it should cost $185 million or $300,000 to $400,000 per culvert. That kind of makes me wonder a little bit. So I'd like to better understand how you make that number go down, because if we're going to get it done, there's two ways to do this. We have to take money from other people, or we have to make the price go down, or we have to do it in over a long period of time, I guess.
What did a culvert used to cost? Was it previously?
Well, yeah, when it was just meant to pass water instead of fish, and meet the criteria that's out there, you know, we could replace a 24 or 36 inch culvert for, you know, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. So, you know, we're tenfold the cost. And a lot of that cost has to do with the mitigation requirements we have. So when we replace this culvert, we need to go upstream and downstream. We're doing, you know, we're adding large woody debris. We're reshaping the stream. We're adding lots of material that we have to go pay for that is now matching the stream bed material. There's a lot of pieces to that rather than just the pipe itself, fish gravel. So a lot of pieces to that project just besides the pipe itself that add to the cost.
The pipe's much larger now than.
And the pipe's much larger, so the pipes we're buying that are 14 to 20 feet in width are anywhere. Well, we're paying close to $90,000 for that pipe now. So just the material itself. So all the construction and work that goes into it then gets us closer to that $300,000 or $400,000, and in some cases quite a bit more. We have a project right now that's a pretty large culvert and it's got a lot of length to it. So, but it's pushing $900,000 for that project. Right. Pigeon Springs.
High traffic road.
Yeah.
Trace Creek.
Can you believe it?
Okay. So I don't have any answers for this, solutions for this either. You don't have immediate liability, but you're right, you likely will have future liability. I think that, and it's good to understand that. I knew you had culverts too, so the way I look at culverts for the state is, one, is it a good thing to do? Well, yeah, if it improves our water quality or if it improves fish flow, I'm not opposed to that. And I look at in the spirit of, we're all interested in water infrastructure these days. We started that from the effort to address flooding, and as we did that, we realized to get that done, especially when you talk about the scale of that project, we're going to have to address other water infrastructure problems in the state. And originally it was water storage, mostly for the east side, but I think increasingly it's going to be aimed at the west side as well. And then flooding and stormwater are the issues we have historically talked about, along with fish mitigation. So personally, I add culverts to that list now because for two reasons. One, it's a huge liability the state has to handle, and two, culverts are actually integrated into just working on flood projects. You already know that. A lot of the flood work is also culvert work.
Right.
Same is true for stormwater in some cases. So the way I put all those together into one big bucket of water infrastructure projects. I think they're enormously important. I think they're based on the polling that's been done and results, somewhat in Washington, but not recently, but in other states around the country, public generally supports solving water infrastructure problems. But that doesn't make it any easier because you got to pay for it, and we're talking about somewhere on the order of 10 to 20 million to $1 billion to do everything we're talking about. If we're talking about addressing not only Shalis River flooding, but Green River, Skagit River, the Yakima Basin, the legacy stormwater in Seattle, Tacoma, Vancouver, Spokane, and we're going to do culverts too. You're talking, it's a big bill. The good news is it's going to happen, it's almost certainly going to happen over 10 to 20 years. So it's not a big bill in one day, but you have to have a source. And having been down that road a couple times now, it's hard. I mean, the one I prefer is you could carve out a chunk of the capital budget over a long period of time. You could find a way to pay for it. That's more difficult now than it was a few years ago, even with the emphasis on school construction. Ton of money. I mean, we've got a roughly $4 billion capital budget every 2 years. If you could put $1 billion of that into water infrastructure, you'd make a pretty significant dent in this over 10 years or 20 years. But the pressure on the capital budget is enormous on school construction. I don't mean to say that as give up. I think that there's still room to do that, and I think you'll see some efforts down that road this year. I think what you just told me and I hadn't been thinking about is when we do that, we have to figure out a way not just to pay for the state culverts, but recognize we have a long-term liability with county culverts as well. Is WASAC doing any research on the scale of the problem statewide?
On the culverts?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have that information? Is that something you can share?
I can get it.
Okay, that'd be interesting, because I think what you could, I don't think it would be that hard if you can find a funding source, and that's still a very big if, but I don't think we get a choice. We're going to have to find one. There's no reason you couldn't make it available to counties. The other thing I've heard more recently, and actually I'm going to talk to somebody about this tomorrow, is the use of the Public Works Assistance account typically cities really use that a lot, counties not as much, but if you can open that up, one of the ideas, I just talked to another member from up north who brought this up, and I'm going to talk to somebody tomorrow in a meeting about this. No, I don't think.
Mara?
Yes, are you at that meeting
Yes.
too? Okay, we're going to talk tomorrow.
I'm on the board, so
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
I agree with you, and the board's changing the way that we're kind of looking at
I
funding
hadn't thought
projects.
about that until a month or so ago when I think that's reasonable. Most folks haven't considered me a friend of the Public Works Assistance account in recent years. And that kind of flips back and forth. Whoever's writing the budget gets to be the enemy of the Public Works Assistance account. For two reasons. One's very practical. In the end, we had to, it took some pressure from there, or relief from there, to make a budget we can all go home and live with. But two, it hasn't really worked well for a decade. I mean, people love to come and tell me how it worked, well, you know, it was awesome back in the 90s, and it's 2018. It hasn't worked well for a while. Now, could it work well again? Absolutely, it could. But I don't think it can work the same as it did before. If you were doing it from scratch, you probably wouldn't invent the public works assistance account like it is today. It's very expensive for the state, and you could get almost the same, or perhaps even better benefits for local governments with a different structure, but it's hard to change it. It's hard to fix it. It's hard to change it. We're going to talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I'd be interested to hear your
I think
thoughts
if
on
you're going to
what-
keep
what-
it,
what
you have to
could
make
we
it
do better?
attractive. And frankly, if you make it so that more counties, especially rural counties, are using it for culverts, I think you'll make it bulletproof at that point, because the cities have pushed hard on this, but it's easier, frankly, just talking in plain terms, it's kind of easier to run over cities. It's harder to run over cities and counties.
Okay.
So gang up on us.
All right, fair enough.
That's my advice.
We're making a push, and I think there's a lot of people on that board and staff too that's trying to think outside the box and figure out a way to make it work better than it has. So.
Not that I'm opposed to that, but I think folks that will be even more interested in helping you if you help us figure out how to make it cheaper to do these projects.
Okay.
Gary, do you want to talk about DNR and?
We're gonna have a meeting, is it next week?
November 5th.
November 5th with representatives from the DNR, and we're gonna take a look, and they're gonna have some projections for us, and we should be getting some results in timber sales. And I think, and again, I've missed very few DNR meetings up there on first Tuesday in every month. One of the things that I would like to see, and again, I don't know the inner workings of the DNR budget, but see exactly what they're trying to do to minimize the impact on counties, because I know they have a fiduciary responsibility, and and again, we have 3 years on a timber sale, so you don't know. 3 years? Is it 3 years or 2? If the feds are 2?
Yeah, I think it's 2 on
Yeah.
the
So anyway, so we don't know when we're going to get that money, and at the same time, I guess, in difficult times, because I think we're paying 25 cents on the dollar right now, each timber county is to the DNR for various departments. What I would like to see is and first off, I'm not sure who, they have audits, I know that, but apparently I know the legislators are kind of in charge of looking at that budget and see exactly what they can do to tighten their budget, so to speak. And counties have to do it. And again, one of the things that I know that when I sat in on one of the budget meetings last year, I guess it was, and you're in this business, and they have their own motor pool where they actually manufacture and make their own DNR. Well, I believe they get the chassis, and of course they manufacture the boxes and everything else. And I'm wondering, just looking at that from 10,000 feet, is there a way of, and that's just one department, and I know it's a big expense, is there a way, would that not be cheaper to contract some of that out and move that around, or, because the state owns it, it seems like, it's like county government, it seems like it costs a lot more to do business. So, I don't know, I just, and we're gonna have a nice meeting, I think, and we're gonna see where some of the, and I know we're gonna have a whole list of questions there on where exactly all that is proportioned. I know there's a big part of it on recreation, of course mitigation, all the things that go along with it. So we're just going to ask the DNR reps to see where we could, what they're doing to help the counties out, because I know they're going to probably come back with an ask of probably 2 cents. I've heard. I don't know for sure.
For 27.
Yeah. From 25 to 27. So I don't know that. That's just what some of the talk that you hear. So I guess I'm just looking at some oversight there. We have to scrutinize our budgets and what the DNR is doing to. Of course, we're in a good time. I mean, timber sales are going through the roof. It's slowed down the last 3 weeks, I guess, but but at the same time, it's been a boom for the last couple of years. So I guess that's what I'm looking at, some oversight there, and we're going to be asking the DNR people lots of questions and what they're doing exactly, because there's so many layers that it's hard to get to where you need to be. So that's some of our concerns. Becky, do you have anything?
No, I mean, the one thing that we want to talk about DNR is it's really hard based on their projections to fit that into our budget. We never know how much we're going to get. It's really unpredictable. It could be, 200,000 less. It could be 500,000 more. And we're making budget decisions based on kind of an average. But, you could make some significant cuts and then all this revenue would come in. And so it's really hard to predict on that portion of the revenue that we get from DNR.
So a couple things you might find interesting. Their budget is a little unusual because it goes way up and down based on the fire season. And we have not, frankly, been successful in controlling the costs of fires. I shouldn't say that. In the last 2 years, it's hard to say whether it's simply luck or weather patterns or we're actually doing something. But I think there is a decent argument that this last year they did better even in a tough summer because of their use of the way they reserved and used aircraft and got after fires earlier. But it really doesn't solve the problem. The bigger problem is forest management, and not so much even state forest management, which are surprisingly, they're not as well managed as the private forests in our state, but they're way better managed than the federal forests in our state.
Yeah.
So what I was getting at is so studying their budget over history, it's hard to come to the conclusion that they are spending wildly or they're being frugal or they're not, because it says these big swings from the fire seasons. If you go back, was it 2015? They had $300 million and almost $400 million in fire costs that year. This year, but the last couple of years, it's been considerably lower. So hard to predict their budget. They of course would tell you that they're constantly under pressure for their budget. At the same time, they just asked for about $50 million to manage forests.
That in the paper.
It's not. I mean, if we had a money tree, the idea that we're going to manage their forests better, and what they propose there is not just to manage their forests better, but to manage the surrounding forests better. And basically, they partner with privates, partner with the feds. And the feds would actually, under this plan, pay their portion of the bill, but it actually gets us out there and it gets us on a track. Because my complaint to them over on the fires has been, they every year they come and say we need $10 million, or we're going to take care of these 40 acres or some crazy number like that. And you're like, wait, but you say the problem is 2 million acres, so do the math. It's going to take you 500 years or something like this to get this done. It doesn't work. They've actually listened over the last couple of years, and they came with a plan. It's a 20-year plan, but realistically, you're not going to get it done in less than that. So they're starting to think more. I would be more thoughtful about they hit that. I would strongly encourage you to keep pressure on them to do better. So that's one thing. The bigger problem, though, and this is really where I think it affects you the most, is, and there's actually a proviso in the budget. We were successful in getting in this last year. Really, one of the few things I was successful in is to make them go out and study and value the public forest lands. And the reason that's important is right now we can't tell whether in any given year whether we're getting a 1% return or a 10% return. We have no way of knowing whether we're doing well or poorly, because nobody can say, hey, there's X million acres of public lands in the state, and recognize some of those are state, some of those are county, some of those are other junior districts that happen to have land for whatever reason, all being managed mostly by DNR. Nobody can say what it's worth and how it ought to be, the kind of revenue it ought to be providing, so we can't tell whether we're doing a good job or not a good job. This has actually surprisingly been, I don't know if I'd say embraced, but somewhat welcomed by DNR. They're actually interested in this question also. A lot of the privates are interested, because especially the sawmills are interested, because that's their source of timber, and they want to understand. Their interest is in having a steady long-term supply, and they want to understand kind of what's there and how we as a state can make it run better. So that's in progress right now. I met with them a couple weeks ago to get an update. It does seem like, naturally, they met with me to ask for money to do the study.
Yeah,
but,
right.
But that aside, I do think their interest is genuine. My assessment is their interest is genuine. They want to understand what it is, so that they can, and they have an interest in providing a long-term, steady cash flow based on the value of the property. But there's a big, I'm saying that just so you know, there's some stuff going on that you might be interested in as it develops. That's in no way an assurance that just because we get there, it'll magically become a steady flow. But it's the first step, and I think it's the first step in getting us to have a more consistent flow of money for both state and local. And this actually this idea originally originated from Grace Harbor.
Oh.
Who manages their own DNR?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's exactly right.
Yes.
There's a reason. I mean, whether they do well or not, I think it's an open question whether they do better or worse based on that.
Mm-hmm.
But it came from some folks out there that had been kind of complaining about the returns we're getting on the state forest lands. And so you just asked, well, what do you think we ought to do? And they're like, well, first you got to figure out what it's worth and what a real return looks like, so you can measure it consistently over time. So again, it's not a silver bullet that's going to fix everything, but I think it's progress.
I think one of the things too that, and again, talking to some people and reading on some of it, the Good Neighbor Authority, I think, the partnership with the feds, I think that's a good thing for the DNR, because from what I understand is, because obviously the feds they don't have enough staffing to move some of these timber sales out. So that's where the DNR, some of their folks are going to come in, and personnel is going to help them out. And from what I understand, the DNR is actually going to be able to, some of the money off these sales is going to come back to the DNR, which in turn would help us. So, and I've talked to a couple private consultants that's working on this right now, and then I had a meeting with up at the Forest Ranger too. So they're cautiously optimistic that this is a good thing, and hopefully that'll move some of that federal land that's locked up. That not because they can't log these contracts, it's because they don't have enough personnel to put these contracts through. They're very complex and complicated, so that'll be a good thing. So there are good things. I know they're doing good things and they're trying. So
we're making progress. We're not nowhere near 1990, but we're making progress.
So okay.
Bobby, do you want to introduce the mayor and
Yes.
talk about the issues?
Yes. Senator Braun, this is Mayor Braun Bradshaw from the city of Winlock. And I invited him to come today because developments that are going on. You're probably pretty familiar with the attempts to develop South County Industrial Park. I think then the legislature, Don, give you 1.5 million.
1.5 million, that was largely thanks to Senator Braun and Matt Matayoshi working with you. That was...
I heard the bid came in pretty good, so you're going to do more than we expected.
Yes,
excellent.
80,000. Yeah. But now the contractor's already trying to get some of that back. But however, there's upsides. With that, we have finally got started. It's only taken 10 full months to go from having the money to actually putting a shovel in the ground. But we are out there working right now. The two upsides to this is working with Toledo Tel. They are furnishing conduit, and our public works folks are putting that in the ground alongside of the water pipe. That's going to be a big boon to the total project and the whole run of the project. So that'll give us future access to high-speed internet. What our particular problems right now is of course not the water line. That's going to happen. We're getting another side benefit from the contractor. Is we have 3 large holes in the ground, all connected in the city from previous fires in the last 15, 20 years, and they've been a terrible eyesore and a safety hazard. They're taking all the native material they're digging out and filling that hole for me. We've been filling it slowly all summer, so we're getting a big benefit. We'll have 3 properties that was just a big hole in the ground with trees and blackberries and brush and people throwing That's gonna be up to street level and a great big city parking lot on the south end of town. So we're trying to get whatever pluses we can. However, our problem now is, thank you for the money, but we need more. Everybody.
Yeah, that's a more common opening than you might believe.
It's straight out there.
Yeah.
We have, lo and behold, it was quite a shock to me last March. I seen that the Mickelson deal was going to expire on March 10th, and I called the family in and said, okay, we're going to have to extend this agreement. They said, oh no, we're not. And that was on March 8th. In this, and I tabbed it and brought it in, it said, however, if the city of Winlock did start the project on or before March 10th, then we would have 3 years to complete it. So on March 9th, I had actually got a contractor out there and a surveyor, and we surveyed the first 100 feet and moved the dirt on the first 100 feet, thereby starting the project and stopping the deadline, but starting a new deadline. Now, as you've seen what I sent you previously, we need 5.5 million to take sewer out and put the road in. Now, speaking with the legislators at the round table, Richard threw out that wasn't the best way to go, and he threw out some options, but those options aren't viable because they're simply all loans and they're 2 years out. And first of all,
2 years to get the loans?
yes. If we applied next year, we would get it the following year if it was approved. But we're already paying off a $14 million loan that built the wastewater treatment plant so we could handle this project, and we're only halfway through that loan. City of Winlock, in all good responsibility, can in no way take on another major loan. We just can't do it. But I've still got the drop dead date, looking me right in the eye. The 5.5 million would do the whole thing, and I understand everybody needs money. But what I'm really worried about is I have to build that road, or I have to give the property back to the Mickelsons, and then the whole is all for naught.
Are you getting any assistance from the from Benaroya?
No. All Benaroya has agreed to so far is on the 1.5 million that you got us, they simply said anything over and above that they would fund, probably feeling pretty secure that we would get it done. They are, yes, sitting in the catbird seat, I recognize that. And people say, well, how come the Mickelsons aren't paying their way? But they are. They gave the land. And that is a sizable donation. Same time we're working with Cardinal Glass, who's putting their well in. They owe us from the water we gave them for the glass plant. They have started their well. They went through the year-long process to finally get it done. They are now putting the road into the well site as we are putting the. So those things.
About that.
Well, they owe us a well, and they owe us 109 acre-feet of water rights. From the original agreement from putting in the, helping them do the float glass plant. They have bought lots of water rights from rural farmers, and what ends up happening, by the time it gets through ecology, you buy a farmer's water. Let's say he's got 100 acre feet and they buy that, and then what happens is they're going to convert that from ag to muni, and they lose half of it. And then they're going to move it from that well site to their well site, and they lose another half of it, so they end up with a fourth of what they paid for. I made an agreement with a meeting with all the stakeholders. Benaroya owes us a well in this project. Cardinal's having a heck of a time getting water rights. Mickelson's have 3 wells with close to 200 acre feet of water. I have said, rather than keep extending Cardinal's agreement, we would just put that on hold until we finish this project. When we put the road in, the Mickelsons will sit down and bargain with Cardinal and Benaroya for the 2 wells and the water rights on the 2 wells, leaving them 1 well to operate the farm until such time as development comes. Everybody's on board with that. We hired Tom McDonald out of Olympia, who is a water rights attorney, and Tom is determining exactly the value of each well and the price of water rights currently. We will sit down with the Mickelsons very shortly when Tom finishes that. County has funded that study up to $25,000, and that's just about at completion. What I need now, the bare minimum I would need for this coming year would be, it was $3 million to go through the Mickelson farm. And I just got an update before I left to go to Wenatchee last week, and our engineer is saying to be safe, now it's going to be like $3.225 million just to go through the Mickelson farm. We had another hang up in this whole thing that we worked out. There's a fellow named Gordon Phillips in British Columbia. He owns a nice stick of land right in the middle of this development. And everybody said you can't deal with Mr. Phillips. I had no problem dealing with Mr. Phillips. He's a real gentleman. He's 87 years old, an attorney. He said he would gift us the land but no expense to him. So we did a document saving him harmless, and that we would do the surveying and we would put the road in. That's another $500,000 to go through his property. That, I don't have a drop dead date on it, but it's still going to have to be done in the future. My real concerns right now is, of course, the Mickelson farm. The sewer on the outside is going to cost us $2 million, primarily because there's a pump station halfway out. On the good side of that, we've already done the engineering on the sewer. We've already got the right-of-way and all of that done this year, what we were doing for the water. So we purchased the land for the pump station. We've done the engineering for the sewer. So that, I think, could, if it has to, that could set on hold for a year. But I don't think we dare, and I don't know any other way. I spent the week at Wenatchee talking to every funding agency possible, and I gave them my whole little packet and dog and pony show. But all they're talking about there is loans, because there's no residential benefit to this project. CDBG and everybody's looking, well, there's not enough houses scattered along 505 to qualify, even if they would all hook up to the sewer.
You know, you still have the housing development there that wasn't built out?
The housing
on the other side?
Yes.
Oh. Okay.
The housing development is building out very nicely right now, and the homes are selling as fast as they build them. That's going to be a boon in our, much next year, but the year after, that'll be a nice boon in our budget. 5 houses completed just here in the this summer, sold already, waiting to close, and issuing 3 more permits to the same contractor to build 3 more. People are starting to see that this is going to finally happen. We do, on the positive side, on Knowles Road, which is on exactly opposite of where Mickelson Parkway is going to be. We have a fellow that I worked with 15 years ago, Harry Anderson, who owns 110 acres there, and he's been wanting to develop it and wanting. Now, he's turned it over to his daughter-in-law, and she came to me with a proposal that was very common sense. It is to put in a long-term RV park for all these folks that reach an age or health status where they no longer can go pick up and go every 2 weeks. They're going to put in a long-term RV park, a real quality one. Al Olson is one of the developers we work with, plugged them into a national developer on these things. They've got a real good plan, and I got a commitment week before last, before I left. They'd already started select cutting and putting a road in, and they're a full go on that project. But that's down Knowles Road, about a little more than a quarter of a mile. That will need sewer and water.
And they have to put it in, don't they?
Yes. But we'll be a quarter of a mile away. We won't be 5 miles away. We'll be a quarter of a mile away at the most. But that's the only commitment we have. Matt is right now on an airplane headed for Arizona to talk to somebody. He is working with one company.
When you say working with one company for
the Mickelson property. Okay. I guess I'm not at liberty to say that.
I don't need to know.
The trouble is, and I'm sure everybody here realizes, everybody says if you build it, we'll come. That's fine, but they put the onus on little bitty Winlock, and I'm not discounting the county's support. Been excellent to work with. They've supported me all the way, and they're supporting us on extending our UGA down Mills Road, and we're already in the process of doing that. I can't get a single commitment. Everybody says, yeah, well, you know, you put the road in and you get the sewer and water there, come talk to us. And I understand that. But the entire South County will benefit, and even North Callis County. You're looking at 3-4 towns down there that are just literally hanging on by their fingernails. I've got more empty buildings than I've got occupied buildings in downtown. That is slowly turning around, but still, we're not going to save South County, let alone build it without this development. That's just the only undeveloped off-ramp, I think, between Portland and Seattle on I-5 that's high and dry. And if we can put the road in and the water's out there, then I can start working on money for the sewer for the following year. Then there's hope that Matt can bring us some solid companies that are willing to locate.
All right. Well, $3 or $5 million is a tough request from a city the size of Winlock.
Yes,
you know, I've advocated for this, and I think it's of the places you can develop in Lewis County. That is among the very best. That's still a tough request. So I'm not going to make any promises I can't deliver on, and I can't deliver on that today. But we'll keep working on it. Okay. I do think we ought to, we ought to be putting pressure on Benaroya, because they have. I mean, if there's no Nicholson Parkway, they have a problem.
I have a meeting. I'm waiting for Matt to get back from Arizona. I want to meet with Larry Benaroya and Matt. But Joe Alhedoff has been the representative for 20 years, since I started with this idea 20 years ago. And Joe is just not that interested anymore. Larry Benaroya has stepped in and has taken the lead. I have yet to have a face-to-face meeting with him, but Matt has, and we did a mutual press release. And I want to start holding their feet to the fire, because I think they've been promised for 20 years this is going to happen. We went through 3 mayors and it's never happened.
They're a sophisticated operation. They know it doesn't happen by itself. Yeah. So Larry probably doesn't take threats very well, but he can do math. And if you explain to him that this isn't going to happen without their help, and he's benefited, I mean, I just think that we ought to be involved, but we are involved. I mean, that's very clear. Yeah. They're going to have to my feeling is they're going to have to step up too. So I don't say that in a threatening manner. I just say, you know, this if we're going to make this work for everybody, they're going to have to be more involved.
Well, I have a proposal for them in mind, and if I can get $3 million to do the Mickelson Parkway, they've got this piece of land, and then there's Phillips' piece of land, then all of Benaroya. And I'll just tell them, you're going to have to step up and do the Phillips property. Because they're dead without it. I could go right to their border, and the Phillips property is stopping them. And the bulk of the project is done at that point.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, how it goes. I mean, like I said, this is a tough request. If you took all the, whatever it is, almost 300 cities in the state of Washington and tried to give them all $5 million, they'd all find a good use for it, but we couldn't afford it. So it may be that this is the right thing overall, best thing to fund in Lewis County right now this year. Not arguing against that, but it's just gonna be hard. And you heard me talk earlier about the pressure on the capital budget for schools and for water infrastructure and other things, so it's gonna be hard. The better you can make this work, the better chance we have of being successful.
I'm going to start putting pressure on Benaroya in a good way, but on the good side for you, that I'm not asking for 189 million that Harry fees.
He didn't ask for it this year, though.
That's over 20 years.
Oh, well, I feel better with that. You're right.
My $5 million sounds pretty good.
Only $5 million. All right.
Nice job. And Becky Butler, she's put together in the past our unfunded or underfunded mandates, and there's a current issue that's coming up. But Becky, do you want to say anything more about it?
Well, I mean, we're working on updating that with any new updates, and you know, like Scott and I were talking about this current change in it, and whether that's an unfunded mandate with the being able to collect from indigent defense.
That's a really interesting question to me. I as I said, opposed that bill pretty strongly. If it didn't succeed, obviously, but if it met the definition, I think you have a very interesting position with regard to the state, because we're putting you in jeopardy.
Well, it's one thing for the state not to fund something like that, but then to take away the ability for the locals to fund it themselves, that's a whole nother problem.
Yeah, I made a note here to kind of do a little ask for some research on how that lines up against the unfunded mandate law, and see. I'm really curious now what that means, but that's just one of many unfunded mandates you'd like to talk to me about.
That's right. We'll get you a copy. Becky,
Yeah,
we'll get that together.
yeah. When we get it updated, and then the interest that we're able to collect also has been for this year. District Court's budget, they submitted reducing that by about $40,000. So that's another impact, the ability to collect interest on those fines and fees. So that's going to continue to go down to nothing as well. District Court used to cover their costs completely, and now we're coming up short every year, close to $300,000.
That's going to climb every year.
We continue, just like every other county, to balance our budget. We've cut costs. We're still down over 80 FTEs. You know, just regular costs, benefits, payroll benefits, health insurance has increased dramatically over the last 6 years. It's really our budget. And indigent defense continues to go up. You know, we have contract attorneys. We don't do an office with hired attorneys, but they continue to come back and ask for their fees to increase as well.
What are you paying annually on indigent defense?
About 1.5 million. And we have some offset in costs from fees collected on convicted. I think it's unconvicted.
Yes,
cases.
but those aren't.
That's annual.
Yeah.
It's a very rare occasion anymore. Maybe if you saw 1 out of 50, probably more like 1 out of 100 cases going through now where they're actually ordering, where it used to be fairly standard, that they would have anywhere between $600 and $1,200, depending on the complexity of the case, assessed in years past. That's been changing over the last several years because of the Blazina decision. They had to make a determination in sentencing whether they had the present or future ability to pay. But now, if they're indigent, that magic word of indigent, and there's a whole bunch of things that can classify somebody as indigent, then those can't be assessed at all. And we're going to see the effect of that. That money's going to quit coming in altogether once what has previously been assessed is collected. There's no more of it coming in.
So there has been a little offset to that, is the state has picked up the dependency cases for juvenile, which should save some money in that department. But again, those cases are unpredictable, and when we have murder trials and those clients are indigent, we have to pick up that bill. So that's a big one. Just our normal cost, and continuing to have, you know, we don't have money set aside for technology, and we have some huge technology projects coming up in the next 5 years. The treasurer system and assessor system will need to be replaced, but there's no revenue source for those technology products or projects. So our capital costs in the future are going to be large. And we deferred a lot of maintenance in the last 6-7 years. We're playing catch up now.
Well, it's 5 o'clock, we said, or 5. So, we used our time.
Yes, you did. Excellent.
In jail medical, you know about that too.
I do.
You know about that. And,
That's a little more complicated.
Yes.
Because it's a federal issue also.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me. I apologize I wasn't able to make the other meeting.
But this worked out pretty
But this
nicely, I
was
think.
Very good.
a good meeting, lots of new information. I think I addressed individual discussions, and so I'm gonna go back and go over those, but I got a few lookups here to work on, and if you have a couple things, if you could follow up with that, that'd be great. Those are questions for me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Senator Braun for coming.